there's just this common theme of like, and not a matter of just inequality of like how much face time ethnic characters are getting in the comics, but the treatment of those characters where it's like they're somehow, because they're dark or they're different, that they're not as American. There's some like really strange thing about that I don't know, I've noticed.
Well, or they can't, for whatever reason, you just can't see them on par with their white counterparts. Like the one thing that kind of triggered us and probably was like the genesis of us doing this program was the article I found out of Comics Alliance was the digression of racial storytelling, where although the author wasn't truly trying to pick on DC, but it was a glaring fact that they don't really develop characters lately. I mean, they've tackled some issues. They've tackled some racial issues. I mean, if you look back as far as the two hard traveling heroes of Green Lantern and Green Arrow, and the black gentleman comes up to him and says, basically, where are the black superheroes? And they just sit there like,
they're homesick.
Dead. The only shining light that I have is I have to give the team of DC, the DC Animation Studios, Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, Dwayne McDuffie, who's also the creator of Milestone Comics, for doing what the mainstream comics either didn't do or won't do, is bring certain depth to those, certain depth to minority characters. The fact that you look at the Justice League television show, cartoon show. I mean, we all know that throwing John Stewart in as the Green Lantern was clearly the token minority when this first started out. But he became probably became one of the most interesting characters through that run because they finally they told a story and gave him depth.
Right.
Well, I mean, I remember that they really did. He was probably the character that I think they came out of the gate with the quickest as far as characterization went in that first season. They emphasized a military background. They made him more disciplined, more driven, more focused. They made how his interaction with the characters based on that.
Right.
Like I remember him agreeing with Batman on training principles, small things like that, and they actually made him to a point where his prominence on the TV show was then reflected by the fact DC went, oh, this is working, and he gained more prominence in the comics.
The one thing I liked about Jon Stewart on the show, 3 reasons. For one, they gave him his own episodes, where he'd be off doing his own thing. 2, they emphasized how loyal he was to his community. Like every episode, you see him walk down the street, just that that he was also like a noble guy, a superhero, but also he was like a normal guy too. He wasn't off robbing a bank. Wasn't knocking someone up and leaving her. He was a good guy loyal to his community.
And he was a black superhero not based at a Harlem thing, for once.
Yeah. I mean, I also, like I said, I have to give them just major kudos in the sense that as that series progressed and they went into jail, Justice League Unlimited, that they made people like Steel second in command. They made Mr. Terrific third command. There was when. You look back on the TV show when Martian Manhunter, who was basically the conscience and heart and soul of the team, left, and they just said, hey, by the way, Mr. Terrific can handle that, and it was significant in a way that it was just matter of factly like, oh, there wasn't like some big ceremony, Mr. Terrific's the leader, it's just, they're like, yeah, of course, why shouldn't he be?
The other thing I like too about the show was the relationship that they had developed between Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. I think it's the first time I've seen an interracial relationship on a cartoon.
Those are even
when he's
rarer
not an
in
alien,
comics themselves.
when he's not when you're not really rapping to a green person, they're like, oh, that makes sense, it's fine.
It's like, I thought that was like so cool watching that.
Well, that's the thing with DC. They'll have characters like that are green, blue, orange. Isn't that what Starfire is? I think she's orange. Whatever.
Yeah, she's
but and they'll have like that interspecies thing going on, but you never really see just 2 characters like. That are Earthlings.
What kind of bothers me though is you look at those characters you were listing off of the Justice League cartoon. It's either black or white. It's white, it seems. I don't think were there any Asian characters prominent in that lineup?
No, I mean,
If there were, I forgot them, which is sad.
Yeah, and once again, no Latino characters,
No.
which is what really I noticed doing
It's
research on
baffling.
this. It's really glaring. It's and that's what I feel. I feel it's kind
You
of
see
sad.
more Native Americans than you do.
Right.
Which is bizarre because there's like 3 of them left in this country.
Right.
That's like.
And don't they mix up Kyle Rayner's
Well,
origin?
yeah, well, that's what got me really started on the whole racial storytelling, and I'm out. Like you said, as I've grown up in the comics and so forth and so on, you do kind of keep a mindful eye for that new kind of ethnic superhero or so forth, like Steel. From when my renaissance as far as comics go was 1993. Milestone Comics came out. They had this, these Denny Cowens, Dwayne McDuffie, who had been in the business, said, hey, let's do something about it, and let's collaborate and get ourselves and have, let's bring our own versions of these particular characters that we know and love. They had Icon, who was basically the Black Superman. Hardware was Milestone's version of Iron Man. You had the Blood Syndicate, who was basically their version of Avengers / X-Men. Static, who was the Peter Parker kind of kid, superhero, and Louise Simonson, when they did the whole Death of Superman, brought John Henry Irons into the fold, and for me, I was like, ooh, wait, oh, almost got a Woody for it, but because you're just sitting there, you're like, wow, and John Henry Irons, although it was based on the whole, John Henry Irons with the hammer, never giving up. He was a doctor. Okay, I was like, all right, cool, who just generally wanted to change things. It wasn't that, it was a slight departure from what you saw in the 70s, where the wrongly convicted black man, he seeks out justice and vengeance. So with that. You just saw things started to change. You also had, like you said, Storm was a big character for me. Just like, she was an attractive, they portrayed her as a very attractive woman.
And strong.
Strong. You had Photon, who was originally, the Miss Marvel, her character. She was a leader of the Avengers. So around that time, so you had some diversity. I mean, in some sense, you think you say that comics they tried,
Right.
but it's like if you want to use a line from the comic book, it's a never-ending struggle.
Right.
Definitely one thing I kind of can emphasize that struggle, as you put it, is if we look at DC, when they over the last couple decades, they've been kind of like taking their legacy characters and rebooting them and whatnot. They I'll give them credit. They tried a few more ethnic characters, like you mentioned. Blue
Yeah, but
Beetle.
where are they now? Where are they now?
Kill.
Black
After
Firestorm
Brightest Day.
and-
Yeah.
but
It's just I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's the brain trust. Like Dan
Right.
Dido and Jeff Johns, who just I get it. I mean, you want to stick to the characters you knew and love. I mean,
Right.
but
Well, yeah,
you
but
have to turn the corner.
Well,
Yeah, you get to a point where if you keep catering to the whole nostalgia of
Right.
the older reader,
Just
you're
recycling
not
bad
going to get
habits.
any new readers
Well,
because
yeah, it's-
guess what? The old readers we're just going to get old and die eventually, and if you want to keep going, you're going to have to
Right. You're gonna bring some people to the
get
forefront.
new blood
Yeah.
in there.
And can we
you know?
move the black people away from cyborgs?
Oh yeah.
And electrical powers.
Or ball-headed and goatees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That'd be
that was
nice.
funny because I remember we were in the store talking about how what happens to different characters, and then like a week later, War Machine.
turns
Was
into
a
a
cyborg.
cyborg.
I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like it was just
You're-
like really like it's just like
It's like I guess that's
if you're born with powers, you become a machine,
Right.
but only if you're black. Like
Right.
it I don't know. It was just the timing of that conversation was just.
Either you're rocking an afro or you're ball-headed with a goatee. I was just like, really?
Yeah. And what are they doing to Blade? They put a mustache on his head. Like he's got this weird there's like, oh, we can't do the bald head thing, so let's mix it up and do like
A lightning bolt. Yeah.
what the hell?
Oh, man.
I mean, damn. It's like it's
Blade got really screwed over. It's like after the movies were so successful, and it was just kind of like, oh God, what do we do with this character?
and it's a shame because I feel like there are a lot of cool things you could do with Blade.
Right.
You know.
Well, I mean, the whole concept of Blade was cool to begin with, because like usually when you think of vampires, you think of just these like pale, mystical creatures. But then you got a black half vampire dude running around out there with a sword. That's
Well, and
awesome.
they definitely were able to play into the whole mixed race thing. There, it's like where does he belong? Sense
Yeah.
of identity issues. Once again, Marvel was always really good at sort of like sneaking in those backdoor issues while no one was looking.
Right.
The social commentary in that. which I think made some of their characters be able to like stand on their own legs a little bit longer. But no, it just that character's just taken, because that's the thing I noticed after Wesley Snipes is like if you actually look at his character as he was presented like in the 70s, he was actually lighter skinned than a lot of Marvel's other black characters, and that was kind of interesting because
you almost didn't know if he was like
but
he was black or Indian or Middle Eastern, or you didn't know if he was Native American because he had that mixed blend.
I think it would be nice. It's like, especially if they do try to incorporate more ethnicity into comics, not to do it in a way where it's just like, you know, all the kids around the world holding hands, you know, it's like you know, like what they did with obviously not comics, but remember the Ghostbusters when they redid the TV show, the cartoon, there was the one in the wheelchair and the black one.
It was like United Nations.
It was like United Nations, and they're totally like, oh, and they have to explain like, oh, this is their ethnic background. I like characters that look interesting, that I don't initially know, like, you know, what their nationality is. Like that to me, it's like keeps me reading.
Well,
I want to know what the deal is with that person.
Is it possible to have, like, I remember Captain Planet, like everyone was somehow representational of the majority ethnicity of their country. Could we have like the kid who was supposed to be like Peruvian or whatever the hell he was? Could he be from like Chicago?
Yeah.
I'm a Peruvian guy from Illinois.
Or what's up now that, you know, you have the Batman Incorporated and you have the Muslim Batman of Paris, and people are just like, what the hell?
Thought that was, the thing is that once again tying into social issues.
Right.
France has a large influx of people from Arabic countries coming in as immigrants, and how's this working with their society? And the thing is,
it was natural.
There's no such thing as there's no such thing as a non-immigrant country anymore. The borders are too porous. We move around too much. I mean, okay, so what do you want him to like run around like the Frenchman from The Boys with a baguette under one arm and a beret and a striped shirt?
Yeah, I just gotta say I'm getting really tired of like anytime there's like a change, you know, like they inject that in Batman, or if they made one of the characters in the Thor film black. It's like, why does it matter? Why? I feel like, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but I feel like the skin color should be the least interesting thing. I mean, like black, white. What does it matter? It's what the character does. You know.
Yeah, but that's the constant problem. Sorry to interrupt, but it's like the constant problem. You like that's the problem with superhero comics, like across the board. And I mean, we mention it every time. You know, like we did the women in comics and stuff like that. And like, you know, the one thing that always comes up is the fact that these superheroes, I mean, they're characters without character.
Right.
You know, they're just these like there's no development. Right. They just come out already like developed, and you're just supposed to follow their adventures and just like go along with it. And you don't give me a reason to care about these people.
Like,
give me a reason to give a shit.
Marvel, I mean,
you know,
right with your point. Like you know, if you basically you want you want to have a character. You want that character to have depth, regardless of race or ethnicity. Like for instance, like they have in Marvel this new character Amadeus Cho. He's gotten very popular. You know, and if you take a moment to kind of read some of the backstory, whether he's with Hercules or he's with the Hulk, it's just a good quality story behind it. So it doesn't. He could be green. You wouldn't care as long as you had a depth of story.
What I really like about Amadeus Cho, and actually they're a prominent Asian character, is his ethnicity doesn't factor into his backstory.
No.
And for those who don't know, what is his?
I think he's Chinese American, or he's Asian of some sort.
And he's like one of the smartest people on the planet.
Yeah, but the thing is he's a kid who was growing up in the suburbs with his middle class parents, who then someone figures out how smart he is and they try to kill him, and his house blows up and he goes on the lam. And the thing is it's not like he doesn't have like a kung fu monkey sidekick, and he's not wielding his magical, his magical mystical Mandarin powers. Yeah. He's a typical American teenager.
Right.
And way over his head.
Would you say that, I'm just going to just do a devil's advocate thing here. Do you think people would be like, oh, well, being the smartest kid on the planet, of course he's Asian. Of course he's from the Asian descent. I mean,
you could see
I can see. I remember I saw something online, someone referenced that, because it shows a scene where he's doing calculus or something really quick in his head, and okay, he's the smartest.
Honestly,
he's doing biophysics too at the same time.
Maybe I'm just the weirdo, but I definitely think at a certain level to have a stereotype in a comic isn't, or applied to a character isn't like the worst thing on the planet, just because, you know, stereotypes are there for a reason. However, it's when it's always a negative stereotype.
Right.
That's where, I mean, because honestly, like, I mean, every race basically has their super sweet stereotypes. You know, the ones that it's just like, you know, being Asian, it's like, oh yeah, we're super smart. It's like, you know, being black, oh, we're really well endowed. It's like, you know, there's some great,
we're
there's some great
super
stereotypes
sexy,
where you're just like,
super
yes,
masculine.
cha-ching, you know.